Babe.
Yes.
I just love our little family with this one little girl. I hope nothing ever changes.
Oh, well, surprise. I'm pregnant.
Now what?
Let's get into that. Hey, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you have joined us for Family Friday on the Marriage by Design podcast. And this is a time we get to talk to you about family and parenting and God's design for both of those things and how we see that in the Bible. And today we're getting to talk to you about becoming parents again. So last week we talked to you about becoming parents, what God says about parenting and our what the Bible lays out as responsibilities for parents, and then some, tips and suggestions and advice from some lightly seasoned parents. And now today we get to talk, well, we're only 10 years in. It's not like we're 30 years into
kids
parenting.
Everywhere.
Well, we've got a lot of kids, but
38 kids here.
But today we're talking about becoming parents again.
That's right.
Because there is a big change when you go from 1 to 2.
No
so
question.
Becoming parents for the first time is a huge transition, of course, but then there's another big transition when you add a second child.
That's right. And some of the things, if you were here for Monday's episode, Nathan did a stupid amount of talking.
It was great.
So Andrea is really going to dig into this, and I'm going to kind of just throw some 2 cents in here and there. Because Andrea really, if I can just say publicly, does an amazing job with our children, and she spends a ton more time around them than I do, and she does an excellent job of integrating them into the family really from the time they're born. She plays a way bigger role in that than I do, and has a real heart that I see for other women who are pregnant and are going to become parents. And I would say even particularly this week, as we're talking about those that are going to become parents again, because there's tons of stuff out there about becoming a parent, right? What we talked about last week, there's a lot of stuff out there for, hey, you're going to become a parent? Here's some books. Here's some people to listen to. But I feel like particularly mothers who are becoming a mother again, it's sort of like, hey, you've had a kid, you ought to know it all. Mm-hmm. And there's some real intricacies to going from an only child to having 2.
Right.
And I would even say a step further than that, can get really tricky when you go from 2 to 3. And then, maybe after 3, it becomes a little bit easier as you add, more on after that. But you do an exceptional job with that, so I'm really looking forward to hearing,
Thanks.
What tips and tricks you have for us.
Thanks.
Should we ever have more kids down the road?
Just so you know, based on the opening that we had, I am not pregnant as far as I know.
If you were,
that'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah, that baby was really awkwardly shaped in your belly.
Oh man, yeah. So if you're just listening and you heard the audio only for the opening, I just stuffed a pillow up my shirt and I'm pregnant. So
right, and just to be clear, I'm actually not either pregnant.
Oh, so, thank goodness! I was
right.
Really.
I know there's some people out there they were wondering, so I'm not.
You're so funny. Okay, so this episode is going to be less biblically based. We did a lot of that in our first episode, so this is just kind of part 2, and a lot of just maybe some wisdom from us becoming parents number 2, 3, and 4 times, and some advice and tips and just things to think about.
Yeah, and if I could plug real quick next week's too, because I want people to know we're going to circle back to that as well. Next week we're going to talk about becoming a big family, meaning having 3, 4 more kids. Right, I'm qualified to talk about that. No, we're going to talk about having a lot of kids and how does the Lord feel about that. And we are going to take a look at what the Bible says about that, and go from there.
It can be a big family.
Yeah, it can be a tricky thing to talk about. So love to have you join us for that as well. But just to be clear, everything we talked about last week as far as biblically applies this week.
Same thing, right? Go back and listen to that if you haven't, or if you're, accessing this episode, maybe in the future maybe you listened to it before, but you're becoming a parent for the second time and you're accessing again, I would really encourage you to go back and listen to last week's episode, Becoming a Parent, because a lot of those things are things that we need to be reminded about, what God has to say about parenting and our responsibilities as parents. We need to hear those things multiple times. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I can get into some of the things that are super helpful in thinking about becoming a parent again. So, yeah, like Nathan said, you may be tempted to think, okay, I have one child. I've done this parenting thing before, so this should be pretty easy. I know what's going on. No problem. I just want to warn you that if maybe that will happen, but more than likely what will happen is you'll realize, oh, the second child that I have is completely different than the first. This baby does not do the same things that my other baby did. My first baby slept so well, and the second baby doesn't sleep. What is wrong? And I can't figure it out. And I will tell you, more than likely that is going to be your situation, where your second baby you're gonna be like, I thought I knew, now I don't. This child is so different. So that's kind of a great thing about parenting, but it's also a really hard thing at first when you realize, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So be prepared for that. Be prepared for not really knowing what you're doing and needing to maybe seek out some advice and lean on the Lord more and more.
Right.
Because you just don't know what you're doing. I've had 4 babies now, and they've all been very different. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm starting over as a new mom with a lot of them,
sure,
with all of them,
yep,
in certain ways.
Yep.
Okay,
yep,
so the first I don't know tip I would give you is when you find out you're pregnant with baby number 2 or whatever, 2 or 3 or 4,
8.
Oh my. Soak up every last drop. So I'm just talking about finding out you're pregnant with number 2, but it applies. Soak up every last drop of having just one child while you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So those are super precious times where you're just the family that you are, and that dynamic is going to change, and things are going to get a little bit more difficult for a while, and there's going to be a transition time that is probably going to be hard for everybody, and that's okay. There's a lot of growth to happen during that, but really soak up the moments that you have while you're pregnant with the child that you have.
Yeah.
And that's really precious time. You'll never be able to have just one again. And I remember when I had Jackson all the way until he became a brother, until Ryan was born, for those almost 5 years, I really tried to soak those years up, because I knew this is the only time I'm going to have just one child and be able to dedicate my attention to just one child. And it was precious. So really try to soak that up.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, and then the next thing is then prepare that child to welcome a sibling. You know, that can happen in a lot of different ways. Of course, you can read a lot of books and talk and be honest. And I think being honest with, if they're old enough, telling them this may be a hard transition for you because things are going to change so much and our attention is going to be divided. And I mean, we had those conversations with Jackson and Ryan when we were going to have Lincoln, because they were old enough to understand. You know, in any way you can, prepare that child. Maybe that's doing a lot of pretend with baby dolls and talking about nice touches, and it just depends upon the age of the child that you have or children that you have. But being able to think about in what ways can I prepare the child that I have to welcome a sibling, do those things.
Yeah, there's a ton of stories in the Bible that serve as good warning signs about what can happen if we're not really diligent about how we love our siblings. So I would encourage you, as you're preparing your child, point to those, right? You can go early in Genesis to the story of Cain and Abel. You can take a look at King David's kids in 1st and 2nd Samuel. You can take a look at James and John, Jesus' apostles, that it says were brothers, the brothers of thunder. Now I would encourage you, take a look at some of those stories and talk about with your kids, even if they're young, right? We can talk with our kids about Cain and Abel and say, hey,
of course,
do you think Cain just woke up and said, hey, I'm going to kill my brother? Of course he didn't, right? There was tensions building, unforgiveness building, right? These are great lessons for us to teach our young kids as they're preparing for a sibling, lessons of forgiveness and sacrificial love and putting others first and, great things that we can teach them right out of the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to have you take the next one.
All right. The next one is include... Whoa. The next one is... Let me try that again. The next one is include older siblings as much as possible. And remember this, your family is being blessed with a baby, not just mom and dad.
Right.
This is key as you start preparing for baby number 2 or 3, if it's baby number 3, that include both older siblings. But man, there can be a real natural fleshly tendency for our children to go, oh no, there's a baby, now my value is less. But to say, no, your value is not less, your value is even more, because you now get to help our family raise this new little baby.
Right.
And can really serve as a motivator and a point of unity for your family rather than a point of dissension.
Right. Yeah, and that looks like different things for different ages, of course, but usually little kids, toddlers, are going to want to be all up in it with you. So you're changing the diaper, they're wanting to be there with you and seeing what's happening. They can help with a lot of those things too. Help pull the tabs and put them on. And there's all sorts of things that they can help with that they don't have to feel like they're just a little runner. Run to get me this, run to get me that, whatever. Right. But they're really an integral part of helping that baby and helping to raise that, or nurture that baby. We all sing songs to the baby to calm baby down when he's crying, or we're all rubbing lotion all over the baby. And it's a really funny mess, but it doesn't matter. Like,
and the baby thinks it's great.
Yes. So tons of things that your kids can do to feel like it as matters. A family had a baby and I still matter. Yep. And yes, the baby requires a lot. And that's part of preparing too. Helping older kids understand the baby takes a lot of attention and time, because that's the way you were too. That's just the way babies are. Doesn't mean I love them more. It's just the way it is. But help me give the attention and the time. And we can do that together.
That's right. And it presents good opportunities for little kid humor to get introduced into the day, which you may need it because you may have been up all night, or baby's maybe colicky and been crying a lot or whatever. I remember when Jackson was younger and his oldest cousin was born, and they were visiting in town, and we had told him, it's so her name's Bridget, and she's a girl, and it's great, and she's just a little tiny baby, and so her mom takes her over to change her diaper, and Jackson's by the table, and he goes, wait a minute, and he runs over to where she's being changed and gets over right next to his aunt where Bridget's being changed, and then he goes, yep,
aha,
she's a girl.
She is a girl.
And then he walked away. He just had to confirm that nobody's pulling the wool over his eyes.
He had to make sure for himself.
That's right. So, those are little funny things that happen when you're included, as opposed to like, hey, I got to take care of the baby, go play.
Yes. Right. Yep. Okay, so prepare yourself for maybe some difficult behavioral issues and extra neediness from older siblings once that baby's born. And then purpose to respond with extra empathy and understanding. Don't get lax with discipline. That doesn't mean that you get lax with discipline and just say, oh, well, they get to do whatever they want because this is a really hard time and they're adjusting. Right. But just understand, prepare for changes in behavior, need the older sibling being more needy or needing extra snuggles or whatever that is, and respond with a lot of empathy, a lot of grace, And that may be hard because you may be really low on sleep and feeling frazzled, but pray into that a lot. Purpose to do that think about that, specifically think about that every morning when you wake up, that this child has had a huge change in his or her life too, and they need a lot of support with that.
That's right. And what you just said, if you are having a tough time as well, maybe you're tired or frustrated or whatever the case may be, I would encourage you, admit that to your, when your older kids are acting up, the older siblings, to be able to sit down with them and say, you know what, I can feel your pain because I'm having a rough day today as well. And maybe take that time to stop and ask your younger child, would you just pray for me that I would have the strength to get through the day? For one thing, that's going to make your older kid, the older sibling, even if they're 3, 4, 5 years old, they're going to feel like $1 million because mom or dad just asked them to take responsibility for praying for mom or dad. And it refocuses them on, this is difficult for everybody, but we're going to rely on the Lord to get us through.
And for me, it refocuses me too.
Exactly right.
Like what really matters.
Yeah.
What really matters right now. And this is it. So
that's right.
That was great. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Find times that you could have time alone to connect with the older sibling once the little one comes along. I really love doing that. I love to get away from baby. I mean, I love my babies, but I also really like to get away from them so that I can feel like I have some normalcy.
Sure.
Some time with the older one or ones to just do things that don't involve baby. So maybe that's the weekends while the baby's napping and you can go do things with the older sibling. Or you can have time, maybe it doesn't have to be the weekend because you're not going to go out anywhere. You're just going to take the time while baby's napping to really invest in that older child. It's very important for them to feel like they're not forgotten. Very important to feel like they still have the attention of their parents.
Yeah.
It's vital for them. So making the time to do the things that they feel loved by, whether that's reading books or playing cars with them or whatever, but for them to feel like I still matter, I'm still important, they still love me and want to spend time with me is huge.
That's right. And dads, if your wife is the one that predominantly is staying home with the baby during that infancy time and perhaps longer, you can really sow into your marriage by taking a leadership role in being willing to take the baby, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I know there's kind of a thing where guys can really struggle with just taking the baby and going somewhere like the basement or their office or whatever with just the baby. I mean, this is not your first child, right? By definition, with what we're talking about. You're not going to break it. Just take the baby and go for half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever. If you have to run some errands right now in, COVID mania, there's probably lots of errands you're running where you're not getting out of the car. So take the baby and go do them.
Sure.
And let your wife, if she stays home, or flip the roles if it's the other way around, and let them have some time with the older kids. That's important.
Yeah, and I still do this. I try to steal away a decent amount of time with my kids in various circumstances. So it may be like nap time for our 2 little boys and I take the 2 older kids out to do something, or it may be I'm taking just one kid to do something, whatever. I love spending time in different kid situations,
right? Because
it's just different and it's concentrated. It's more concentrated on them. So when I can, it's great.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to be super expensive, right? I mean, get a zoo pass, where you pay one amount for the year and you can go as much as you want, or a children's museum pass. And go do that.
I was at a coffee shop. I met up with some friends a couple weekends ago, and I was at a coffee shop and I saw this woman doing a great idea. She had her little girl was probably 3 with her, and she was at this coffee shop sitting on the couch. They had ordered probably a little hot chocolate for her, and a mom ordered a drink, and they sat there for a long time reading books and talking and giggling and whatever. And I thought, what a sweet way to connect with her younger child,
Totally.
going and getting coffee
Totally.
and reading books and giggling together. Like, super
great.
sweet moment. So, and that didn't cost them more than $6. So
Right. It's great.
Yeah, super sweet.
Really good.
Okay. So having a new baby, huge transition. Make sure you're being honest with your spouse. Maybe that means that you feel nutso because nothing is clean in your house, and
Not us. I mean,
yes,
there are people, not our family, but there are people out there.
nothing's clean, nothing's organized, laundry's everywhere, everything's exploded, I constantly look like a mess, whatever. So be honest with your spouse. Like, I'm going nuts in this house because of that sort of things. Like, let's use the weekend. Can we please use the weekend to catch up on some of this? Can we please use the weekend for me to have 20 minutes alone to put my makeup on? What are you laughing about?
Are we still doing the episode, or are you... Is this like...
Nathan hears this sometimes for sure. Like, I'm overwhelmed. Can you please help me with this? Or can you do the kid thing for an hour on Saturday?
Can you go handle that?
Yes. Can you do the kid thing for an hour on Saturday morning so I can finish all the dang laundry and it's not spread out all over everywhere or whatever, you know?
Right.
Be honest with your spouse. Or, hey, emotionally, I'm not okay right now. Can you pray for me, and can you check in on me halfway through the day? And just have some adult conversation with me halfway through the day.
Yeah.
You know? Be honest with your spouse to know what you need and help you to be a team.
Right.
Yeah, ask for it.
Yeah, that's right. Another way this plays out, babe, where do you think I'm going to go with this?
Sex.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
That's where you always think.
So
Do you think of anything else?
This is...
Is it always just playing in the back of your head?
No, I mean, sometimes I'm sleeping. But seriously, this is one thing where communication is important, because the reality of the matter is, when you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little kids that are all demanding of you all the time, and I think of like our baby right now, Lincoln, and if someone else is not holding him, he is either holding onto your legs or crawling his way over to where you are to hold on to your legs.
That's not true. He's better than all the rest of the kids with that. He's really pretty good about playing on his own. But by the time you get home, he's gotten pretty needy. So
the point is, it's not unreasonable to realize, like, man, I just don't want anyone touching me.
Yes.
At all.
Yes.
Hint, hint. Right? But we don't always get the hint. And so... figure out what works for you guys, right? I mean, have a secret language that the two of you, and if you have a kid already, you probably already have a secret language about, let's, meet you up there, that sort of thing. I really need Bible
study right now.
Right. You come up with a secret code. Language. So, come up with something too where you can gently, because if you're at home, right, as the wife, and your husband's at work all day, I'm not the only guy that thinks about sex and looks forward to that.
No.
So, it could be that, I've been thinking about that. I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. And then
you come home and it's like, ah!
Right. So talking about that, it can prevent, frustration and conflict and, and certainly, guys, you need to be living with understanding,
right,
with regards to those things.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, another tip: when you have 2 kids, they don't always nap at the same time, and so when you had one, it was great because at least up until they're 3 or maybe 4. For our kids, it's a little bit longer. You can count on nap time, and it's great. It's like a time or maybe 2 built into the day that I know I'm going to get some alone time. I can get some things done. I can take a nap myself, whatever. But when you have more than one, they don't necessarily, especially at first for quite a few months, nap at the same time. And for me, that was a very hard transition when we went from 1 to 2. Yeah. It's like, I don't get any of that, or I get very, very little of that. And then as we went from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, and now that we're at 4, I've more embraced the there are kids around all the time, and there's not really that alone time very much anymore, and I've gotten more used to that, but that was hard. That was a very hard transition. So understanding this may be a difficult transition. Let's try to fiddle with schedules to try to overlap some of their naps so that I can get some of that time where they're napping at the same time. But just understanding that that's hard, and trying to figure out ways that you can overlap naps is a good thing. Okay. Another tip is remembering that the really hard phases don't last forever. So this parenting gig that you get to do for 18 years or maybe more isn't going to be always like the littles.
Yeah.
All the time. It's not going to be as needy in every way. It's not going to be as loud, maybe. It's not going to be, it'll probably be as messy in different ways.
Sure.
But these really hard times where you're needed so much, or whatever it is that's difficult for you in the moment, that it doesn't last forever. So hang on to that hope that it may be a period of time that's really hard. And then you may enter into a phase where, like, wow, we're really jiving and this is great. And then you will probably enter into another phase at some point where, like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. But just hold on to that hope that the really hard stuff doesn't last forever.
That's right. There's probably somebody watching this video right now who your little baby is 15, and you need to remember that right now as well. Right, these hard times, they don't last forever, and the Lord is your strength. So let's not lose this time because it's difficult.
Yeah.
But let's stay focused and make the most of it in spite of the difficulty.
Right. So, second to last thing, my mom has said for a long time, one of the most true things: motherhood is a guilt trip. And I find that more and more with the more and more I talk to moms, that we feel guilty about everything in regards to parenting. I mean, and I do. That's my personality, to feel like I'm just failing at everything, And so when you have baby number one, it's, you can dedicate a lot of attention to that one baby or child. That's all you have, but you add baby number two and that guilt trip grows exponentially. And so having the understanding that you will probably feel guilty if that's the way you feel sometimes anyway, that guilt is going to grow and grow and grow. And ask the Lord to really cover that. Ask the Lord to sift that. Sift out those things that you shouldn't feel guilty for, and bring to your attention the things that need to be worked on, and to not feel guilty about those things, but to really have the honesty with the Lord to work on them and ask Him to work in your heart and make those better.
That's right. Remember, we've talked about this before, but it's a good reminder. There's a difference between guilt or condemnation and conviction. And it's important for us to remember the difference. And here's one of the biggest ways you can diagnose this right when you feel it. Is what you are feeling comparison-based? If it is condemnation and not from the Lord. So what that might look like is, man, Andrea doesn't parent like this. I do parent like this, so I must be bad. Or this must be wrong. Or, man, how is Andrea so much better at X, Y, and Z than I am? Even if that's a subtle thing, right? I mean, if you feel like, man, I'm so guilty for not playing with my kids, ask yourself, well, why do I feel that way? Like, what even makes me think that? Right? If you can come back to, I feel like all these other moms play with their kids all the time. That's a comparison. And that is not how the Holy Spirit works. Right? Conviction is, I have a standard for you as a mother of the children that I've asked you to steward in this time. And I've made it clear in my word, and I'm reminding you in light of my word that this behavior that you have doesn't measure up to that standard. Let's fix that.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great piece. Okay, last thing. Rely on the Lord.
Key. I mean, we really buried the lead, babe, we'll be honest.
That's okay. Rely on the Lord. Adding children, whether it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, is difficult. It's a huge transition. It's a huge blessing too.
It is.
But it's difficult regardless of what number it is. I will tell you, it gets way easier the more you have. But
right, so have 4 or 5 or 6
to add them in. But it's always a transition. It's always change and some hardship and all that sort of thing. So putting your reliance on the Lord, maybe it's, God, I got 3 hours of sleep last night, and I need to rely on you to keep my attitude towards my children God honoring.
That's right.
I'm relying on you to give me the strength that I need and the caffeine that I need to get through the day. And I have prayed many prayers. Lord, will you let my little boys sleep together, overlap enough today that I can have a nap that refreshes me? And it happens. I mean, sometimes it doesn't. But most of the time when I'm desperate and I pray those things, either I'm able to nap or God just supernaturally gives me the strength to not need one,
It's good. Really good.
And be okay. Still be okay. So God is on your side. He is for you. He is for your children. He wants the best for you guys, and he's not going to leave you ever, especially in your time of need. So rely on him and ask him too, will you speak to my older child's heart and reassure them that they are loved, they matter, and nothing has changed in their importance just because we had another child. So will you reassure them of that, Lord?
It's great, babe. Really good. Really good, sweetie.
Thanks.
It's great. Man, thanks for bringing that. I hope you guys found some of that encouraging. You may have other tips for becoming parents. Again, love to have you share those with us so that we can share them with the community. You can put them down in the comments below. Put them over on our Facebook page, Marriage by Design Podcast. Or you can hop on to our live event, which will be coming up just 2 days from now on Sunday evening.
Sundays at 8:30 Central.
Love to hear those tips and tricks there. Until then, guys, remember, God is for your family. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.